I'm John Travis. We have two main companies that we operate. One is a commercial painting company, the other is a commercial millwork company, J.E. Travis Painting and Travis Millwork. We do have residential divisions within each, but most of the work that we do is commercial related. It's hospitals, hotels, schools, lease spaces, restaurants, jails, theme parks, airport hangars, you name it. That's the type of work that we're doing. And at the moment we operate out of 90,000 square feet. We're the production facility for the millwork side. Some of it is in Austin. There's a facility that we have there, and there's a facility here in San Antonio, Texas. On the painting side, we pretty much operate in a triangle from Waco to Del Rio, down to the Valley, over to Victoria. Most of it within the San Antonio area within about an hour, hour and a half. When I first started in 1998 in painting, I started with one gentleman who's still with me. And from that point, we've grown and grown and grown to 140, 150 some employees today, operating out of the San Antonio and the Austin markets. Was able to do all this through the efforts of everything I learned growing up through my family. I'm the fifth generation since 1886. It's been 130 years of knowledge in my family, and although my companies were not contiguous with the family companies, the knowledge and experience of my uncles, my dad, my grandfather, my great-grandfather, information and knowledge from my great-great-grandfather has all been invaluable in helping us get to where we are today. That and the amazing, talented craftspeople, men and women who have worked with us for many, many years that still work for us in this extended family as we create beautiful things.
There are a lot of companies that go to 2 generations. There'll be very few that go to 3. It's virtually unheard of to go to 4 and to go to 5 generations of continuous business. Well, that's 1 in a million, maybe. The family business started in 1886 in Wharton, Texas. This would have been my grandfather's father. His name was James Albert Travis. We have a photograph of him with his employees in Wharton, Texas from 1886, and he's standing in front of 2 buildings. One building that I believe read that he was a blacksmith and a wheelwright, and the building to the right of it says that he was a painting contractor.
He married in 1889 to a lady from Belgium whose name was Barbara Weltons, and they had a number of children. So Wharton at that particular time, we're talking now 1880s, railroads just coming into the county. But then in 1900, there was a big hurricane that came into Galveston. And historically, it is noted to have wiped out tens of thousands of people and tons of property. Well, part of that went also to Wharton, and in particular the rain swelled the Colorado River, and the Colorado River, as reported in newspaper articles, actually all over the country, flooded half of the town.
And so that caused them to move from there to Bryan, Texas, where I think he lived for about 3 years or so, my understanding, and then from there migrated back to San Marcos.
I believe we also have a photograph of him in a wagon.
And on the side of the wagon you can read the word paints, and there's a phone number, if I recall, it's 229, which turns out to be the phone number that he had when he was in San Marcos.
During his time in San Marcos, when he and his wife started having children, is when he had the birth of my grandfather, Leon Edward Travis Sr., and his brother. I believe that my grandfather and his brother worked for James Albert with his paint contracting business.
I believe after World War I, in which he participated in France, my understanding, and drove an ambulance in World War I. Came back and cranked up his paint contracting business and moved it to San Antonio. He married Mary Lou Cronk. She was, I think, a telephone operator in San Marcos.
When my grandfather, Eliad Travis Sr., decided to marry my grandmother, Mary Lou Crunk. He was young. He had just basically gotten out of high school, and he hadn't gone to college yet. And Mary Lou was a few years older than him and well established as a telephone operator, so she had a little income. The story goes when they decided to get married that Ed had to borrow $2 from Mary Lou in order to get the marriage license. So Ed started with absolutely nothing. He ended up a very successful man.
They started having kids. They had a daughter first. Her name was Dorothy. And then my father came next, Leon Edward Travis Jr. And then came the youngest, which was my uncle Milton. I called him Uncle Mickey.
I have in my hand one of my grandfather's memorandum books. This was the method by which he estimated projects. This particular page is one about a project that he bid at Fort Sam Houston. It says 160 squares of walls and ceilings, $240. 180 openings, $300. 48 outside openings, $96. 48 screens, $60. Stairs, gutters, on it went. Total project, $786. He paced off his projects. He didn't have any measuring tool, a tape measure. He would look at it, make a wild guess, and was very successful at doing it.
He changed the name to L.E. Travis and Sons, I guess because of the fact that my dad and Uncle Mickey were part of the business at the time.
My grandfather's shop was down on 3rd Street, which is in downtown San Antonio. Sherwin-Williams had a paint store on Commerce Street, not too far from my grandfather's shop on 3rd Street. And so my grandfather did a lot of business with Sherwin-Williams. They hired a young girl, I think she was 19 years old, and became the bookkeeper at Sherwin-Williams on Commerce Street. So anyway, when my father came home on leave, or when he had just finished his service, again, I think he was home on leave, my grandfather took him. They were riding around checking jobs. Part of that process, they went to the Sherwin-Williams paint store, and my father got introduced to the young bookkeeper there at Sherwin-Williams. So fast forward 75 years, 76 years now, and if you're looking at the results of that, sitting here in the chair talking to you.
Of course, that's where my brother Eddie comes in, Ron, myself, and my sister Cindy, and that became the start of the 4th generation.
Why don't we start by introducing yourself?
William Barrett Travis.
Leon Edward Travis III.
Ronald August Travis.
Well, we're kind of spread out. There's 8 years difference between me and Bill. Ron and I played a lot together. Dad had a workshop, and we were always building something back in the workshop. Go-karts or slingshots or something like that. When I was a kid, and I was 3 years old, we lived in a 2-story rock house on what is now roughly the corner of San Pedro and Loop 410, northwest corner. I can remember as a kid going to the airplane hangar. The airplane hangar sat across the street from what is now North Star Mall. I recall somewhere along in there was a couple of 10 airplane hangars. In one of those hangars, Dad had his airplane. It was a Blonica, my recollection, canvas covered. But I can remember watching him take off down a grass strip runway that went to the north. Kind of went down a hill and then came back up, and there was a hay barn way off in the distance. It's probably about where the runway is now for San Antonio International Airport.
They had so much work, and I think it was scattered all over the state, in different areas of the state, that Dad got his pilot's license and actually had a plane that he bought, and Dad would fly to the job sites, just to save time. They had a large project in the Dallas area, a housing project, and I believe when it was all said and done, I believe that almost took the company out financially.
The story goes that the guys would check out in the morning, get their paint and their brushes. They would go inside, work for a little while. They would take their paint bucket, stick it in the closet, and go to another job where they put in 8 hours, and then come back at the end of the day, get their paint out of the closet, pour it out on the ground, and check out. with my dad and my uncle's operation. So they were double dipping, they were getting paid twice. So I don't know how long that went on, but my understanding it was fairly extensive, and they lost a lot of money on that project.
And eventually they too split their businesses, and Milton ended up right down the street from us, same street, Habe Drive. And so we would often go down there and bug them. And eventually the next generation began to appear there, and we were of the same age, so we would often go down and talk, share what we're bidding against each other on, and see if we could find out what the other guy's number was.
Mother was our bookkeeper for many, many years. They did a payroll every week with time cards, all done longhand, using a comptometer and an ad machine, all the checks handwritten for 100 employees or more every week, and Mom did that.
And the joke was always that Dad got all the glory, all the accolades, that Mom was the one that really did all the work and held the business together. Dad, again with his reputation, he became involved with the Painting and Decorating Contractors of America. And that was a big organization across the United States in its heyday. And Dad ultimately became president of the Texas Council.
And then he became what they call a regional vice president, which he traveled several states, southern states, on behalf of PDCA, worked on their behalf, talking to contractors and trying to bring the industry together to do great things to move the industry forward. The National PDCA, now it's called PCA, they changed the name to, used to be the Painting and Decorating Contractors of America, now it's the Painting Contractors Association. But there's an award, a national award, called the Ellie Travis Jr. Craftsmanship of the Year Award. And that was named in Dad's honor, and is still being awarded every year. So I went to work with my dad summer starting when I was 6.
I started in the business when I was still in high school. Being raised in that family, where did you go for your summers? We went down and helped Dad.
I worked in the business every summer from 6 years old through high school.
I remember every summer working down at the shop, stacking paint cans, dusting paint cans, washing out paint buckets from the job sites to clean the paint buckets, sweeping the floors. After my freshman year in college, I decided I didn't want to be involved in the painting business anymore. I'd sanded all the sheetrock and cabinets that I wanted to sand, and cleaned up all the messes that I wanted to clean up. So I went to work for the Texas Highway Department and worked building a section of Loop 410 on the south side of town. After my junior year, I got a job with Texas Instruments in Dallas. So I worked there that summer. Right after I graduated from college, I got married. And my wife and I both had jobs at TI in Dallas.
I went to Texas A&M University. I got a bachelor degree in environmental design. That's a 4-year program that leads you to be an architect. But the day I walked in, I knew I was going to be a paint contractor when I came out. So every chance I had during those 4 years, I worked with professors to study an aspect of architecture that would be beneficial to me as a painting contractor.
Back when I was at A&M, a fellow told me that if I could, I ought to try to go to business school. And so I applied to go to the Harvard Business School, and I was accepted there. During my second year at Harvard, we had some classes on small business. And so that intrigued me. And I said, well, we got a small business back in San Antonio. Why don't I go back and dive into that? And so that's what I decided to do. So that's how I ended up back in San Antonio. Came back in June of 1971 and started working full-time in June of 71 with my father.
So he was actually back in San Antonio while I was still up at Texas A&M. But in reality, we started about the same time, just in different parts of the state.
Going to Texas A&M, when I initially went there, I wanted to study wildlife science. I, at that particular time, had no interest at all being in the family business. And my father persuaded me that that's not what I wanted to do. He wasn't pushing me to go into the family business per se, but he said, that's not what you're going to want to do. You're not going to be able to get a job. It's all political. You have to know somebody to be able to get a job with one of those departments. So I ended up getting a business degree, Bachelor of Business Administration, and my specialty was business management.
In June of 1971, I guess Dad had, Travis Paint and Supply, and he had Ellie Travis and Sons, and I guess he had Ace Cleaning Company. Does that sound right to you guys?
Yeah.
So Bill and Ron were in school. They weren't around. So Ron showed up in probably June of 73, something like that.
Yes.
The work had basically all been union up to that point. Ron was around, and so we started an open shop company with his ownership. And so naturally, R.A. Travis Painting was born at that point.
1975.
1975.
I got out of A&M in May of 76, and I remember that Eddie and Ron had been doing some sandblasting work.
I had Ellie Travis and Sons, and I was busy. Ron was pushing R.A. Travis Painting. He was busy, and the sandblasting end of it had grown to a point where we needed somebody that could really focus on that. So Bill was standing there and looking around for something to do. So he said, okay, you're it. And he agreed to it.
My involvement, I worked for Eddie and Ron as general manager for a while. I do know for a fact that in 1977, we incorporated Ace Cleaning Company, and I became president, and Ron and Eddie were vice president, secretary, treasurer, whatever. And it became a corporation.
So Bill came in, and we took off from there.
When I got involved, Dad was having a rough time with the business. I think he had a job that was not going well, and I think it was really putting a hurt on the business financially. I think because I had gotten involved, and so all three sons were now involved with the company, I think Dad was worn out, and I think he knew it was time for him to step back, and so he did retire.
My name is John Travis. Ron and Bill and Eddie are the generation above me. Ron is my dad. Uncle Bill, Uncle Eddie are my uncles. I mean, my earliest memories, vaguely, when they were at Haby. Vaguely. I was very small. My earliest memories that I remember were the building of 3,400 Nacogdoches, which I think was 79, so I would have been like 4, 5. But I can remember crawling through the walls and going upstairs and hiding in the attic while the thing was being constructed. And that's where, for the parts that I did, spring breaks and summers, I always worked at that shop.
I mean, this is 3,400 Nacogdoches. Yep.
You blasted over here in this building.
This was the sandblasting operation. That's where Bill operated out of. When we first moved in here, we built this wing on the end down here to have a recovery system for sandblasting. That was the sandblasting. And we put in a steel floor on the bottom, and
Sand would fall down.
sand would fall down and shovel it over to the side into an auger deal that went back up into a sandblasting pot.
We had the small yard at the end of Haby, but I started going out and hustling work from steel fabricators because there was only one company in town that did almost 100% of the industrial work, and they had no competition. And then in 1981, I formed a new entity with Ed and Ron, of course, called Travis Abrasive Blasting and Coatings. Then in 1984, I changed the name from Ace Cleaning Company, Inc. I didn't like that name from day one. I didn't think it was representative of the type of work that we did. I changed the name to Travis Industrial Painters Incorporated. And so Travis Industrial Painters did the large water towers, ground storage tanks, big big superstructures. Travis Abrasive Blasting did the yard business and then handled the smaller commercial sandblasting projects around town.
Brother Bill liked to change names of his companies.
We decided along the way that we would start a company that would own the trucks and the equipment and the assets, so to speak, of what each of us did. and we used the name Travis Paint and Supply, which was the name my dad had for his DeVoe distributorship. So in a sense, Travis Paint and Supply owned my spray rig, my ladder, my truck, my everything, the sandblasting equipment.
The companies really didn't own any assets to speak of. It did not own any equipment, didn't own any trucks, didn't own any inventory of material, supplies. Travis Paint and Supply owned everything.
And we in turn then could lease that equipment to our various companies.
You remember all of them?
We had L.E. Travis and Sons, we had R.E. Travis Painting.
Travis Industrial Painters, Inc., Travis Abrasive Blasting and Coatings, Inc.,
Ventura, the wallpaper company, and Travis Paint and Supply. That's 7. There may be another one there. So all of those entities then were owned by one of us or collectively. I owned all of R.A. Travis Painting. Eddie owned all of L.A. Travis and Sons. Bill ended up owning all of Travis Abrasive Blasting and Coatings. But collectively, we owned Travis Paint and Supply. And we had an agreement to share in the profit and losses of each of our companies. So whether or not R.A. Travis Painting made or lost money, they got 1/3 or they paid out depending upon whether they were the winner that year.
We had a deal where everything went in a big pot and we split it all up. Worked really good. Worked real nice.
and that's where the whole story changes.
Well, Eddie, Bill, and I worked together for about 20 years. The fact that we worked together allowed us to have the synergy and the resources to be able to tackle those larger projects. Besides, you had 3 brains, and sometimes people look at things in different ways, and sometimes we would bounce off each other. How would you do this, or what do you think, or what's the best way to tackle this problem? You know, it had its problems. Anytime you put 3 brothers together, sometimes you don't all agree. That wasn't the reason for dividing.
I'll give you my take on it.
Yeah.
My brothers will have their own take on it. Brother Ron started I think having thoughts that he wanted to be out on his own, and didn't want to have to be tied to the other 2 of us.
And Ron felt like that he wanted to have control of his destiny, separate from his brothers.
What Ron communicated to me, and I guess to Bill, to us together, was that he could see that with our families and children that we had, that eventually we were going to have to split anyway.
We all had families. Eddie had 2 girls. I had 2 boys and a girl. Bill had 2 girls and a stepson. Who would take over and manage this many companies? Not that the women couldn't or wouldn't do it, but as we got to that point, there wasn't really any interest in any of them by any of our kids.
I was not for the split up. I'll put that on the record.
I think for me it was difficult emotionally, but I could respect what Ron wanted, what he alluded to. You know, it was difficult, a sad time.
When we got to the end and decided to split it up, it was easy to say, I own R.A. Travis Painting, I will take it. Eddie owns L.E. Travis & Sons, he will take it. Bill, Travis Abrasive Blastings, and at that time, Travis Industries. And then we dissolved Travis Paint Supply and divided up the equipment.
Well, there was 3 of us, and even though we were of different ages, we decided that the fairest way to do it would be just to divide it all equally, 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. And when I say equally, I mean equally. If there was 6 pencils, each guy got 2 pencils.
I don't know that it was fair, but it was done by literally casting of lots. I put a pile of spray equipment over here, and a pile there, and a pile there. There's 3 piles. Pile 1, 2, 3, draw a number. That's your pile, that's your pile, that's your pile.
I got real frustrated because it was a very tedious process, and I got tired of it. And so I went out in the office one day and carried a roll of toilet paper with me out to the warehouse, and we had a bandsaw out there.
Took it out to the bandsaw, cut it into 3 pieces, put it back on there, so okay, each one of you use your third.
Put a little label above each
Yeah.
third.
Yeah.
Hey, Ron,
So
Bill.
you got your inch and a quarter.
But the big deal I remember most of that was I had to use the restroom and I'm already done. And now and then I noticed this toilet paper and how is this all gonna work?
It turned out to be a good joke and brought a little levity to the situation.
In my case, I had to reshuffle with the two brothers to get back the equipment that I needed to run my operation. I remember specifically buying items for Ron and Eddie, vehicles, sandblasting related equipment, air compressors that they had that they didn't really need with their commercial painting business. It wasn't necessary at all, but I needed it. And so we had to do independent transactions to purchase back what I needed to put my company back together again.
It took a long time to figure it all out and to make it happen, but I'm glad it happened. Some of us grew in exponential ways of being separate that maybe we wouldn't have done had we stayed together.
Looking back on it, I guess it turned out the way it was supposed to turn out, and everybody did fine. But it was a difficult process.
I ended up taking R.A. Travis Painting, and I moved out to property that we had collectively bought on Nacogdoches Road. And I traded my brother Eddie a third of my interest in Pintura, the paint company, for the paint store, for a third of that land. I eventually bought the other third of the property from my brother Bill.
In the end, I ended up with L.E. Travis and Sons, and I ended up with Pintura Paint Store.
I had the two entities, the Travis Industrial Painters, Travis Abrasive Blasting and Coatings.
Travis Paint Supply got dissolved, and all of the assets got divided up. The wall covering company got dissolved and really didn't have anything. It was just a paper company. The assets were in Travis Paint and Supply.
Ron went his way, I went my way, Eddie went his way and hung on to the paint store. And it was a very friendly, no harsh words, no hard feelings, quite frankly. For me, I don't know how the others feel, but it was the best decision that was ever made.
Well, for me, I just continued on the same thing I'd been doing, running both L.E. Travis and Sons and Pintura Paint Store.
Now that I was on my own, I could make my own decisions and grow the business in any fashion that I thought I needed to without, having the approval, to go through the approval process.
One thing the split did do for me is it freed me up to more actively pursue my interests in our trade association. So I was able to do that, and that turned out real well. I really enjoyed it a lot. My wife, Carrie, got to go along with me. We got to travel all over the United States, meet a lot of really great people. Ended up getting on the executive committee for the National Trade Association. I ended up working my way up to be president of the National Trade Association for a year, and then stayed active for a number of years after that till finally I needed to move on and do something different.
I made a very large gamble. In 1996, a couple of years after we split, I stopped operating under the name Travis Industrial Painters and stopped operating under the name Travis Abrasive Blasting and Coatings, and took it and formed a new entity called Travis Industries. And that grew. And then in 2000, I made a big gamble, and I bought a 26-acre tract of land out in Tri-County Industrial Park, I-35 going towards New Braunfels, where there was a tremendous amount of expansion. But I also made a decision, and I had outgrown Nacogdoches Road, so I bought 36 acres out on Southeast Loop 410, down by where W.W. White Road crosses by 37 going to Corpus Christi. And finally got both yards set up probably by 2002.
So when I went to school, I chose a program that at the time was very new. It was a biomedical engineering program. So it was electrical engineering with a biology biomedical overlay.
And I chose that not because I had a particular interest in that, but because I did not know what I wanted to do. So I graduated and went into management consulting. What that meant was the part I was doing was walk into a company, see where they were currently, where they want to go, figure out what the delta was and how to get them from A to B. And I met my wife at that time, who lived in Virginia, and I knew that I'd want to settle down and be available and be around and start something new. And I didn't think that that lifestyle was very conducive. Problem was, okay, you're not going to do that, what are you going to do? Well, the only thing I really knew how to do was what I grew up doing. So I didn't think that was what I was going to do, but I didn't see any other options. So I literally called my dad, told him what it was that I was thinking. And I guess my original thought was that I would hook up with him and be involved in his business. And he told me on the phone that that was not an option.
I decided at the very beginning that it would be best for him to not work for me, but to start his own company. I said, having done what I've done and seen what I've seen, I'll shave 10 years off of your development. If you'll start out, I'll give you the money, the men, and the contacts.
He gave me a guy, he gave me a location, and he gave me $35,000 to get started. And that was a tremendous blessing. And from there, you know, we just gutted it out. Literally those first few years, you don't make a dime. You know, your guys for the first 8 years made more money than I did, which was great and fine. So you're just scrapping by to grow the thing.
And then eventually, as I decided that it was time for him to go and he decided he wanted to expand, he moved out and got his own location. And then we decided, once you walk out the door, I'll bid against you, you know. If you get it, you get it. If I get it, I get it. And if you need help, let me know. But for the most part, we are competitors. And we did compete for many, many years.
I competed a little bit against John and Ron both. Ron longer because he was around longer. But we were all friendly competitors, and they had their customers and their jobs, and I had mine, and we all did what we needed to do in order to execute those contracts.
And at Valiant is where I first got into millwork in 2003. Literally with a table saw, I think I got at a garage sale, and a bandsaw, I think I got at the same garage sale or something like that. One of the contractors came in, it was John Goebel, and said, "Hey, who made your desk?" I said, "Well, we made our desk." He says, "Well, can you make some millwork for me?" "Sure, I don't know anything about it." He said, "Well, I'll help you figure it out." And then I hired this fella's, one of his buddies, took him out of the field, took all the paint cans that were in the back for stored paint and cleared them out, and bought a few other machines, and then boom, we were into millwork.
I'm Carlton Catalani. I am Bill Travis's stepson. I come from a line of entrepreneurs. Both my stepfather, Bill Travis, and my biological father, Frank Catalani, were both entrepreneurs. I didn't necessarily want to enter family business. I had it's a funny happenstance. I had an interaction with a guy that I was acquaintance with, and we wound up sitting together and having a 2-hour conversation about family business and the pros and cons. I said to myself, well, this is something I need to take far more seriously, than I had been up to that point. And so, I came back probably midway through my senior year. I engaged a little bit more with Bill and with his business, which at the time was, fairly modest size contracting company.
My son, Carlton, had taken over the Nacogdoches Road site, and he had a piece of equipment that he owned that he was trying to sell. And a fella from a company called Basic Industries of South Texas out of Corpus Christi came up to buy that piece of equipment from Carlton. I said, while you're doing that, why don't you just buy my business? At that time, I was totally burnt out, could hardly go to work every day. I was so tired, so run down, so stressed out, trying to run both operations. He said, I heard you have an excellent reputation, and we would like to buy your company. So that was it. I was done. That was 2004.
Bill exited the business around 2004 after selling to this contracting business. The company then was called Basic Industries. And then I went to work for Basic Industries for a number of years. I was probably with them until from 04 to probably 2009, 2010. In 2010, I dusted off the old signage and went back to work independently as industrial coatings contractor, and this time absent any participation of the family.
I was 55 years old when I quit. I was born in 1951, so we can do the math there of when that happened. Somewhere in the early 2007 or so. But the way it worked, I didn't say, all right, today I quit. I said that I know I'm going to quit within the next year or so I'm going to quit bidding those projects that don't start for a year. And I'm going to begin to focus upon those projects that I can do within the next few months. And eventually I whittled those projects down until I finally finished the very last one.
I think he called me and said, hey, I'm thinking about retiring. What do you want me to do with all my stuff? Essentially, I paid him, let's say it was $35,000. The symmetry of it, paid $35,000 for ladders and scaffold and equipment and the like. I literally remember it being very undramatic, ceremonious, where a truck backed up and stuff got unloaded and that was it.
I finally decided that it was time for me to quit, and so I decided that I would just wind it down. John had approached me, I think a couple of years prior to that, saying, hey, Uncle Eddie, when you get ready to retire, let me know and maybe I can help you out and we can work some kind of a deal where it'd be beneficial to me and beneficial to you also. Well, what we decided to do is that I would just merge my company into his, so to speak, in regards to all the employees. That one day they would work for me, the next day they would go to work for John, and hopefully all of them would transfer over and none of them would quit. So then, assuming we do that, and then John would help me, he would act kind of like a leasing company, so to speak. My people would be working for him, he would be paying them, but at the same time they would work for me on my jobs, and I would reimburse John for the cost of the payroll, so he wouldn't be out anything. I would still direct them, I would still manage them, I would still finish up the jobs that I had started. John helped me, I think it lasted about 4 months or so, trying to finish up the existing work that I had. After that, stuff that would come up, I think I just contracted little things to John, and he went and did it, sent me a bill, I paid him, and so that's how we finished that up.
So Uncle Eddie retired in 2018, but literally we had it from a Friday to a Monday. His workforce stopped working for L.E. Travis & Sons and started working for J.E. Travis Painting. I think of the 19, 20-some people that came over, I think all are here today except for maybe 4 or 5. Took his workforce and essentially just rolled it back into this contiguous 5th generation that we're doing, and hope that they're blessed by working with another member of the family, myself and others, and I hope that we're a blessing to them as well.
So I got to thinking of all the people that I'd worked with. In reality, there's thousands of employees that went through the company during my tenure, and they all had their own stories. And some of the stories were positive, some of the stories were negative. Sometimes bad things happened, but they're all memories.
I can never thank my grandfather and my father enough, Eddie and Ron, for being there with me. I could never thank any of them enough for having the opportunity to be in the family business. I think it's a great legacy that was laid down by J.A. Travis, and I'm glad that I could be a part of that as a 4th generation. I'm very proud that Carlton got involved as the 5th generation. I'm real proud that John's in there and doing it day to day as a 5th generation with his painting company and Travis Millworks. And
I'm glad that together we were able to continue the tradition of the Travis painting for another generation. We were the 4th. My son John is the 5th. Whether there's a sixth, we don't yet know.
Where we're at right now is we want to be the best that we can be in both painting and millwork. Within painting, in this part of the world where God has planted us, we just want to do all things with excellence and do them well. And in order to do that, you're constantly reinventing yourself with training, technology. It's constantly evolving on the paint side. On the millwork side, there are opportunities to take things and grow them exponentially. You can make things from San Antonio and Austin or this region, and you can send them all over the United States and the world. And we're exploring many of those different avenues. We're looking at different products that we can offer, partnering with global brands to provide some of their millwork and architectural casework needs. I mean, there's just a lot of opportunity there. So a lot of opportunity to serve customers, not just in this region, but throughout the country. And so that's a lot of fun. I'm only in this spot because of everyone else. And I hope if the next generation decides to do it, then they can take the lessons of both myself and the generations before, and they can take those and do it better. And very grateful to be in this spot, to have this opportunity to reflect back on such a rich and long and meaningful, hardworking history.